Hey there, everybody. This is JJ at Rural Rooster in Austin, Texas. I've had a lot of people asking me who are wanting to print with us. Best way to set their art up for best results. In particular, like trapping and things of that nature. So I thought I would do a little demonstration about some techniques we do. I definitely feel like often the best achieved prints are actually created from the beginning with printing in mind, and trapping is basically built into the art, and and certain choices are made based on what could be a problem or not be a problem. That said, what do you do when you create art and you want to set it up to print? Well, this is often how we receive art. I'm going to do this in Photoshop. I do often work in Illustrator, but Photoshop works too. So this is often the state that we receive art to print. This is a Labrador print by Bryce Dishongh. I'll put his contact information in the notes on this video, but I thought this print would be a good one to demonstrate with, because it had lots of the top common scenarios as far as trying to trap and set it up. So this is a 3-color. He has the Pantone numbers here. It's an orange, a brown, and a black as shit, apparently. So for starters, usually when I'm setting up art, assuming that we're doing it on a light paper color, we're printing this one on a manila, I might just, for setting up the art purposes, I might change this just to white. So I'm just going to Apple delete that layer just so it's white. So usually you're going to be doing, assuming you're on light paper, you're going to be printing light to dark. That works best for trapping. It's definitely a little, the things you do to trap are going to be different if you're doing light colors on dark paper, because when you're doing it that way, the light colors tend to sometimes be a little transparent, and so if you're doing too much trapping between two on like a dark paper, you end up having a very noticeable third color where the trapping overlays. But with a dark color, it usually just hides the trapping. It definitely helps to get familiar with the inks that whoever's printing is using. We use Speedball most of the time, though sometimes it's TW. Different inks, different colors have different amount of transparency, so that's definitely something to consider. But I'll kind of give some tips just based on general light to dark principle. First of all, if you'll notice, all this is exactly knocked out. If you zoom in, I'm going to move this with the keystrokes like over a little bit. That's just 2 arrow taps on my keyboard, up and down, left and right. You can see that it fits exactly, which screen printing is very imprecise, so you definitely don't want to rely on things having to be 100% exactly placed to work. A general rule of thumb that I like to say is if you can do 1 or 2 taps any direction and it totally messes your art up, then it might not be a good idea to do it that way. For instance, there's one issue on this print right here where where these words overlap a couple colors. Even with trapping, there's not much we can do. For instance, just 2 taps totally makes that, or even just 1 tap in certain directions makes it like weird. So for the most part, I'll be able to make all the areas in this print look fine with 1 or 2 taps by doing trapping. If there's 1 or so areas in a print that just has to be dead on, that's fine. But what happens is when we're actually printing it, we'll prioritize this area, and assuming that the area up here, if it's just a little bit off, still looks fine, then it's fine. But if there's an area like this in this corner and it's over in this corner where things just have to be perfect, like in all corners of the print, it can be pretty difficult because any amount of screen stretch or humidity and the air can just make the screen contract or expand just a little bit, just making it, virtually impossible to 100%, zero tolerance nail. So trapping is a good thing to do. So one trick I do in this scenario when all I have, this might as well be flat, because you can just come in color select range, color, and then make a new layer with that. So the way this print is right now is one step away from being flat anyway. So the first thing I do, in this circumstance is I actually am gonna color select the paper color. Because basically when you set trapping up, you don't want it to go bleed into where the paper is supposed to be. So I'm going to select that color and create a new layer. Apple delete will fill in the select. Just so you can see it, I'm going to color overlay it, double click the layer, just do gray, whatever, just so you can see that it's where the paper is supposed to be. So what you can do now is, so on this last layer, this is going to be the last layer that we print, the black. You don't need to do any trapping on that because that's the last color, and it is what traps the other colors. So really in this print, we really just need to trap on these two colors. And since it's a 3-color and there are spots where these two colors touch, we are going to add some trapping between even these two colors. And once again, I'm going to do the dark on top of light, so you won't really notice it. So what you can do is you can, and I am working at 300 dpi, so for pixels and stuff, it does affect if you were doing a 600 or 800 dpi. Doing a 5-pixel stroke is going to be different than if it's a 5-pixel stroke in 300 dpi. A lot of people I have heard like to work in 600 or 800 dpi for doing art setup. I don't necessarily feel it's necessary, but I'm sure people have their reasons. So if you come in here, you can add just a basic stroke in here, and I would say at least do a 5 to 8 pixel stroke. That's very minimal. Honestly, the more the better. So I'm honestly just gonna do like 18 is probably fine. If you notice, it looks kind of small here, but if you look at the inches, that's on my screen, that looks pretty small. A lot of times what I like to do is zoom in to when it's approximately an inch. Like on my screen, that's approximately an inch, so you can see that's it's a decent trap. So if you'll notice though, here I'll go ahead and make it the same color just so it looks the way it's supposed to be. One thing I'm going to do actually before I keep that stroke visible is I'm going to take all of the original layers and group them and call this original so that I have something to compare it to. Duplicate that, put the original up here just so when I'm double checking that there's no weird trapping in there, I can look at that. So I'm going to call this the trapped layers. So if you'll notice, I'm going to turn the stroke back on. There that is. I'm going to copy this white layer into the original so that when I make it visible, it just hides what's underneath it. So if you look in where this feather is in this area, there's a white line, which is the paper color between the two feathers. And now that I stroked this layer, it goes where it's not supposed to. So that's where this my paper color layer comes in play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rasterize these layer effects. Sometimes there's an easier way to do it, but sometimes I'll just make another layer and then merge layers, and it rasterizes it. I'm pretty sure there's a button just to do that somewhere, but anyway, so now that's all it's not even stroked anymore. Now it's all solid shapes. But what you can do is you come to this paper layer now, and if you hold Apple, while you click on this, it'll make the selection of that. So I'll turn that off. You can see this is where its paper color is supposed to be. So what I'll do then, after I've stroked all that, I'll come in and just delete the paper color out. And now it is trapped where it's not supposed to be paper color. Like in this area, it's trapped out, but where it's still supposed to be paper color, I deleted that trapping. One thing you can do is you can take the opacity down on these colors, and you can see where that's darker on this edge is where the black comes on top of the orange or whatever. So I also got to do that same basically process to this brown. So I'm going to come in and add a stroke here. I'll make it that same color just for, it's at 13. It's fine. I think I did 18 on other. Doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to do, like I said, the more the better. Because a lot of the places where you can't have it, you'll delete out with the reverse paper knockout anyway. So merge these layers so that stroke is rasterized. So now I'm going to come and select the paper layer and then knock it out of that brown. Deselect. So this is sometimes you can just do that and bam, you're done. You'll notice there's areas in here, especially since I did a pretty heavy trap. You'll see how this brown came in some areas it's not supposed to be. One thing, one good trick here, it's kind of like the reverse paper knockout, is to actually do, since I still have the original ones, I can just select that color, the orange or whatever. See what happening is that some of the trapping from the darker brown is bleeding into the lighter color where it's not supposed to be. So if you select that and then delete it back out of that dark brown, it'll take that away. So there are some areas where you want trapping though, like in this area. So once again, you can do the old opacity trick on this darker color, and you can see where it is overlapping. We want that. We want the overlap on all the places there it touches. If you'll notice, there is a little bit of weird things going on still in some spots, and what that is on this orange layer, the trapping bled underneath where the dark brown's supposed to be and is still there. So there's a couple spots where you get little weird hook kind of shaped areas, like some of these little things, there's little points and stuff everywhere. Sometimes you need to go clean up a little. So I'll leave this brown layer on just so I can see where there's things that don't really need to be. And sometimes, once again, it helps to look at the actual art sometimes. So I'm going to go in and delete a couple things out of this lightest color just with eraser tool. So basically, this area doesn't need to. Doesn't need to be here really. So let's see, where does that? So you can basically just, and then if you click delete and then drag your eraser down like a little bit and hold shift, it'll do straight line deletes, which are kind of cool. So I'll just come in, clean it up out of these areas that it doesn't need to be. One thing I'm noticing now that I'm zoomed in over here, there's a little thin line there. One thing I noticed over here is there's little white dots, which I believe is just, that's weird. That's actually the original. It looks like it actually is in the art. For whatever reason. Well, if it's in the art, then I'm just going to leave it since I didn't set it up to start with. And there's a little weird thing going on here, too. Generally speaking, I don't try to change people's art. I'm trying to duplicate it exactly how it's going to be. But if this is your art and you're setting it up from the start, then obviously it's hopefully you notice things like that if you do or don't want them. And honestly, by the time it screen prints, I mean, this is way zoomed in. It probably won't even burn through. So anyway, so let me go back and finish cleaning up all these things. So there was more over here. It's easier to delete some of the stuff when you zoomed in. See if there's any other particular weird areas, at least between the dark and the light interaction spots. It looks more or less okay. I'm not sure. There's a couple weird things like this thing right here. I don't think it really supposed to be there. So that's in the darker area. Just delete that out of there. This is, let's see, in there too. This is supposed to be there. I don't think this one really needs to be there. What about this? I'll just delete that. Okay, so it looks like all the areas where the lighter and darker brownish oranges colors are overlay are pretty fine. Actually, now I'm seeing this little thing here. What's going on there? Alright, so yeah, these little extra points are, that looks like it's in the dark color. I don't think those need to be there. It's just underneath, so I'm gonna just delete that out. As well as these little extra, these are some more of the hooks I was talking about. Like on the original, it just goes straight across. It didn't need to like curve down, so I'm just gonna delete those out there as cleanly as I can. Some of this trapping won't be super pretty. There's some stuff there. Like if you look, I mean, I'm zoomed way in, but you know, some of these little areas aren't perfect. I mean, if you were drawing your art in Illustrator, or you know, if you're at the level where you're actually still just creating your art, you know, I definitely recommend, you know, trying to draw these as, you know, beautifully as you want your art to look. But this is going to be trapped under that dark color, so you honestly won't even see that really. You know, it's a good idea to at least try to like mimic contours and stuff. So like, if there was a shape in there that had a particular sharp edge, I might try to like, you know, mimic that in the edge of the trapping. I don't think I need any of these things. So just for a minute here, I'm going to just delete a bunch of these because there's several of them around. Honestly, what I can do, since it's a straight edge, I can click there and then come down to this straight edge there. It'll make a clean line. So here's, I'm not sure if that one needs to be there or not. Not really. I'm going to delete some of this one out just because I'm all pixelated now. It should be fine. So there's one right there. I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit. I'm going to flare it up that way, just so that we don't get a little bit of that peeking out if registration moves at all. Flare it over. So I know there was more of these hooks over here. Let's see, there's that part. Don't need to, just gonna. You know, some of this stuff is easier in Illustrator if these are actually all solid shapes, because you can just kind of move the points around rather than having to like just eraser tool stuff out. But you know, so I'm just gonna flare this out a little bit, soften that corner just so it doesn't peek out by accident. Doesn't need to be there all the way. And honestly, since this is a solid shape right here and there's a small little area, you know, that's one of those times where you could just fill all that in if you wanted to. Make sure I have that right tilt. And I might just kind of, as long as it kind of mimics the edge a little bit, you can kind of come in and do like this. You won't really see that. I see one of those hooks over there. Everybody traps a little different. A lot of this is just like, it's not a formula. It's a lot of just, you know, choices that are subjective to the person doing it. So, you know, I'm sure a lot of people would be doing a little bit of this just a little different, but that's how it is. Let's see here. Well, I can do that all the way up to here, I think, and it'll, there we go. Sweet. Let's see if there's any other major areas. Might as well fill this one. Oh, there's the hook over in that corner. Just gonna do that. Double check that. Yeah, it'll be fine. I'll come in and just fill that in that kind of amount. Should be fine. Doesn't seem like there's any other major hooks or whatever. Looks pretty good. So here's another area up here where these these white shapes are knocked out, and these heart things. I'm just gonna go ahead and fill that into it. There's no reason to. I generally, the more things you can just completely underbase, just solidly, the better. I think it just ensures a clean print. There's certain areas where you can't do that, but so here I'm going to turn off the original and actually just turn on my layers. I'm going to do a quick. This is still on the transparent, so I'm going to double check looking at the transparent. Doesn't look so bad, honestly. Also, like if you notice in here where that word chocolate is, if you did minimal trapping, you might still have little white lines in there. I would, even if there was white lines in there, that's definitely an area I would still fill in. It looks pretty good, honestly. I'm just gonna put this back 100%. Now I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit so I can see the full screen, and I'm gonna turn the original on and off. You'll notice when I have the original on, it looks a little. You can see little white lines around, and that's just because it was perfectly knocked out from each other. So when I am trapping it, it looks a little cleaner, like it's more solid, which is better. And you'll notice there's nothing else that changes though, and that's a good thing. If something changed significantly, then something was wrong with your trapping. Like you don't want it, like all of a sudden there to be like an edge that's peeking out in the paper color that isn't supposed to be there. So that's basically it. Once again, a good rule of thumb, like I said earlier, was to do the old like tap your layer with just the arrow keypads. So if I do like, that's 2 keystrokes, you can see, and the lines and the feather is where you kind of notice it the most. You'll see it in this dog area, and honestly in the dog area, if it's one way or the other, isn't that big a deal. The feather, well, you notice it, but that one's off a little bit, but it doesn't ruin the image at least. Obviously we'll try to hit it as perfect as possible, but the goal here is to fix any areas that if it's just a teeny bit off, it ruins the image. The one area in this print that does a little bit have that has to be right on, or it's totally going to look bad, is this area where it says available in. You notice if I do just one stroke one way or the other, it looked kind of bad. So generally speaking, I would say if there's an area like this in your print, just don't do it, because if one keystroke on the computer is going to make it look bad, then you're asking a lot from a screen printer to make sure it's perfect. This area is another area that potentially could be pretty bad as far as if it's off at all, because you'll notice this white is actually paper color, and there's 3 colors coming together to make it. That can often be like a real problematic area as well. Fortunately, in this one, just due to the nature of it, I'm doing it back and forth on the darker brown. It doesn't really. If I do 2 up or a couple down, you'll see a little bit of a tooth here. Obviously we'll try to avoid that, but at least it's not like completely ruining the art. This one, back and forth a couple times, you can see it, but it's one of those things that when you see the final art you might not really notice, but that available in is it has that we have to nail that, or it's going to look weird. So if there's one area in a print like that, that's fine. I would recommend not having any areas like that, but if there is, we'll just have to prioritize that area when we're printing it. But once again, if those kind of areas are peppered all through the print, it is asking for problems. So anyway, that's the basics of trapping in this scenario. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you like this, if you want to know some other topics, you can message me or leave comments or anything as far as if there's any other tips you'd like to know. I'd be happy to do something on halftones or color overlays with transparent inks, or setting up for colored paper. Another thing that is nice to know about is a lot of artists, kind of like the Tyler Stout type of style, or comic book type of drawing illustration where they have just like line drawings or everything. You often call that a key image. That helps a lot with this kind of stuff, because basically there's not any areas, or there's few areas where you're relying on like multiple colors coming together to make shapes. Basically, a lot of times artists use outlines around everything, and so then you can trap it and move things around, a couple of keystrokes, and it's always trapped underneath this black line. So that is always a good way, or the successful way to make a screen print. Once again, thanks again for watching, and have a good day.